So hey, it's S. Lee and JB again, and we are finishing out our interviews from Killer Nashville in 2024.
Today we're going out with a bang. We have Cindy Dees, Larry Kelter, and Katherine Hutchinson-Hayes.
And after we finish out Killer Nashville, we did do a few interviews at BoucherCon, which was also in Nashville this year. Stay tuned, it'll be up shortly.
I'm Cindy Dees, and I write military and espionage thrillers.
And Cindy, can you tell me what was the worst writing advice you ever got?
The worst writing advice I ever got was to stay where I was in my writing career. I had an agent who put me at a publishing house that greatly limited what I was allowed to write. And the agent told me, "You're selling books, you're making a little money, don't move, don't try anything new."
What's the greatest challenge you've ever had as a writer?
The greatest challenge I've ever had as a writer was when I was diagnosed with cancer about 8.5 years ago, and I'm fine now. But when you're diagnosed, there's about a 5-day period where they tell you you have cancer, and then they run a bunch of tests, and they tell you if you're dying and you have weeks or months to live, or if it's going to be just a blip in the radar of your life. Mine turned out to be a blip in the radar of my life. But during those 5 days, the great challenge to me was the question came into my head of, if you only have one book left, what's it going to be? And that was really a challenging moment for me to realize I had never written that book before.
What's the most surprising thing that ever happened to you or was said to you as a writer?
During the pandemic, my literary agent called me and said, 90% of all writers have stopped writing. Please keep writing. But we understand publishing is shut down, so I want you to write some books just for your own entertainment. Fast forward, I wrote a crazy book that I'd always wanted to write. She really enjoyed it and agreed with me it would never sell anywhere because it was too crazy. And then the second book I wrote was my first spy thriller. I finally gave myself permission to write a thriller. And it was about a woman assassin of a certain age. And you don't do that in thrilling. You don't have 60-year-old women assassins. And I sent it to my literary agent. And the most surprising thing that ever happened was when she called me about 2 weeks later and said, "Oh, I think I can sell this." And I was like, "Publishing shut down." And she said, "It's not 100% shut down, and I think I can sell this." And in a matter of days, we were in a hotly contested auction. And then the biggest surprise of my life happened when she said, "I need you to write me a TV Bible," which I had no idea what it was. I had to Google it. I sent her a TV Bible, and she called me 2 weeks later and said, 26 studios and production companies are in a bidding war for your book for a TV show. And it was absolutely a lightning strike. I never expected anything remotely like that.
So what are you working on now, and where did you get the idea?
Well, right now I am actually working on a project I can't talk about because I'm developing a book and a TV show. It's actually a book series and a TV show for a major production studio that they asked me to write. So it was their idea. It's not even my idea. It was their idea.
And what would be your best advice to someone who wants to be a writer?
I have 2 pieces of advice. The first one is what I call my ABC theory of writing, which stands for apply butt to chair. For me, it's the ABCD theory of writing, which is apply butt to chair daily. And it's hard. It's hard to find time to write, but if you're committed to doing it, you have to figure out how to shoehorn it into your life. My second piece of advice is to write what you love. And notice I'm not saying write what you know, I'm saying write what you love. Because if you have passion for the book that you're writing, that passion will show up on the page as joy and excitement and emotion, and your readers will respond very strongly to that, and they will love it too.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's my pleasure.
Hi, I'm Larry Kelter. I'm the author of 30 novels, give or take. All mysteries, thrillers, a lot of humor thrown in there. I wrote the sequel to My Cousin Vinny back in 2017, and writing Vinny and Lisa arguably was the most fun I ever had, sitting in front of a keyboard. And I really enjoy what I do. I really love it. The publishing business has changed in the years since I've started, and I try to adapt to it.
Okay, so what was the worst advice you ever got?
The worst advice I ever got was on my very first attempt at having my work seen. I wrote a short story many years ago that I submitted to American Zoetrope, and some troll wrote back, "Don't quit your day job." And I don't know whatever happened with him career-wise, but I'm glad I didn't listen. I just, I had some stick-to-itiveness, and I kept writing, and I went from short stories to full-length novels. And it's been successful for me. It's a challenge every day, a new challenge, but you have to embrace it and do what you love, and I love writing.
And the greatest challenge you've ever faced?
Though the most challenging thing I think I face is embracing the new publishing world. We're living in a day and age where so many books are brought to market. Amazon did an amazing thing back in 2007 when they created Kindle. They gave a voice to everybody, which is the good news as well as the bad news, because now there is just such an overcrowded marketplace with millions of books being published every year. So if you're not a household name, if you're not a James Patterson or Danielle Steele, or I don't have to mention the other names, it's very hard to find some air to breathe. It's very hard to get noticed, and it's created a lot of tumult for authors in the midsection of the publishing world.
Okay, and then what is the most surprising thing that ever happened to you as an author?
Unquestionably, the most surprising thing that ever happened to me was when I wrote my first book. I was a devout, and still am a devout fan of Nelson DeMille, and I had seen him around, not the neighborhood, but he's a Long Island-based author, and I was a Long Islander as well. So I wrote to him and asked if he would read my first book. I said, "Listen, I've read everything you've written, and would you take a peek, please?" And he said, "I don't ordinarily do that, but sure, send it to me." So I did. It was before ebooks, not before ebooks, but it was before, email was prevalent. And I printed out a manuscript and I mailed it to him. And it probably sat there for probably close to a year before I heard back from him. But I was stunned because he actually picked up a pencil and did some editing work on my original manuscript, which was just floored me. I'm not sure if you know this, but Nelson DeMille does not type his manuscripts. He handwrites them on legal pads and then passes them to his secretary to be entered into the database, the word processing database. And his notes were so sharp and insightful. I mean, ever be thankful for the way he helped me. And he also gave me a blurb that I hadn't requested. And he said, "Lawrence Kelter reminds me of an early Robert Ludlum." And then he penciled in, I said early because he wasn't so good at the end. That really stunned me.
Did the blurb help you get it published, or?
It must have. It must, yeah. I mean, I still sprinkle that blurb around from time to time. It just, it's eternal.
Okay, so what are you working on now, and how did you get the idea?
What am I working on now? Well, I'm usually working on many things at once. Right now, I have a book coming out in middle of October, and it's called Beyond the Veil, and it's a story of love and revenge. And the tagline is, "He picked the wrong woman to betray." It's a little bit different than the things I've written in the past, because I usually write more humor and more police procedural. This is sort of a romantic suspense book about a girl that gets left at the altar, but not for any reason you can imagine. And it gets very involved and very nitty-gritty and very subversive, and she has to wade through all these lies and nonsense to figure out what really happened and why he took off.
And last, what would be your best advice to someone who wanted to be a writer?
Don't give up. Don't give up. It's not an easy climb, and it gets harder all the time. As I mentioned when you asked me the first question, the publishing market is rigorous. If you want to get ahead, you really have to treat it as a job. Wake up every morning with a plan, how you're going to market it, how, what books you're going to write, how you're going to present it to the world, and don't develop a thick skin, because criticism is easy to come by. Eventually you'll find those fans who, praise your work and love what you do and will want the next book. But at the beginning, when you're querying agents and editors, it's a lot of static and a lot of no replies and a lot of rejection, and that dissuades a lot of people right at the very start. So you really, you have to really want it. You have to love writing, and if you do, and if you you read a lot and write a lot, you get good at it, and I'm sure you'll succeed.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
An editorial note: we did this interview with Larry before Nelson DeMille sadly passed away.
Hi, I am Katherine Hutchinson-Hayes, and I'm so excited to be here.
And what have you written, Katherine?
Okay, so I am coming out of complete nonfiction, right? I have written for educational journals, I've written devotionals, Bible studies, and now I'm writing thrillers, and I am having such a blast. So my debut thriller came out this year. It's called A Fifth of the Story.
Okay, and Katherine, what was the worst advice anyone ever gave to you as a writer?
It's so much. Like, where do I start? Like, I have heard I've gotten really bad writing advice. One was that every single dialogue line has to have a tag, right? And that I need to move away from said. I should say he laughed as a dialogue tag. I should always have them doing something for every single dialogue. It was the worst advice ever. So it was trash. So I wrote many pages of trash to follow that crazy advice.
Okay, what is the most surprising thing that ever happened or that someone said to you as a writer?
Okay, the most surprising thing that has ever happened. Okay, so this was super cool. In this debut thriller, A Fifth of the Story, there were secondary characters that people fell in love with. One of the names is Mrs. Lipset. So shout out to my mother's, some of my mother's side of the family. But they love this character, and people would sit down and talk to me for a long time about her. And I realized that she needed her own book. So that was really shocking and surprising. I didn't see that coming. And another thing that I thought was interesting is people really related to some of my characters, including the villain. They were like, I was so mad when I found out he was the bad guy. Like, he was super bad, but there were so many likable things about him. So that was shocking, but super cool, because I did not want my villain to be completely evil. He had to have some redeeming qualities, so it worked out.
Okay, and what would be your best advice to someone who wants to be a writer?
Best advice to someone who wants to be a writer. Okay, so our families, they love us, hopefully most of the time. If not, find other family. But what it is do not lean into like your circle of friends and family to be your people in your writing community. They will support you, they'll feed you, they'll take you out, but they're either going to give you really terrible advice, yes you to death, and say everything you write is perfect, or be really negative. Find a great, credible writing tribe, get into a critique group, go to conferences, really study your craft. Don't think that just everyone can just be a writer. You may be really talented and gifted, but study your craft and read great writing and pursue and never give up, and don't ever take no for an answer.
Thanks very
so
much.
much.
Oh, so much fun. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Guys.